The center of global power is never constant and is ever changing. Just look at the past century. In the early 20th century, Europe was the center of the world's economy and culture. After World War II, however, it shifted to the United States, and it remained that way for much of the latter half of the 20th century, as the United States' economy and culture were unparalleled in the world. But from 2000 to today, a monumental shift happened, and Asia has now become the center of the world. Countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, and India all have exploding populations and economic growth outpacing the rest of the world. But one power trumps over all, and the United States and Europe are no longer the world's most dominant powers and must learn how to trade and work with China. According to the Asian Power Index, the United States, although not officially an Asian country, remains the dominant player in Asian geopolitics. And this comes as a result of its close relationship with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. But don't be fooled. China is close behind the United States, and by the year 2030 will likely be the most powerful player in Asia and the most powerful country in the world. China's power comes in three ways. For the purposes of this talk, I'll call them my three pillars of Chinese power. First and foremost, and unsurprisingly to most of us, is China's population. It has a massive population of 1.4 billion, the largest in the world. It has 102 cities with more than 1 million people, far outpacing the United States for comparison, which has just 10. The average age in China, however, has increased to 38 years old. But their population is more educated than they used to be, they're living longer than they used to be, and they are wealthier than they used to be. That leads me to China's second pillar of power, its economy. It's no surprise that China has one of the world's dominant economies. I mean, look around you right now. Pick something up. There's a very good chance that it was made in China. What is surprising, however, is how quickly the Chinese economy went from primarily agrarian farmers to an industrial power. In the year 2000, China had a GDP of $1.3 trillion, lower even than the US state of California. Today, however, in just 20 years, they have a GDP of $13 trillion, 3 times that of California. In addition, China has maintained a high GDP growth rate. Its growth rate is 6.6% and is more than double the growth rate of that of the United States. Although the United States currently has the largest economy, its growth is being outpaced by China, and by the year 2030, China will have the largest GDP in the world in terms of purchasing power. And finally, that brings us to China's increasing political influence throughout the world, its third pillar of power. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping launched the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, referred to by many as the New Silk Road, designed to increase China's political and economic influence throughout the world. How this works is China meets with leaders of a developing country and agrees to invest and build infrastructure for them that the developing country would be likely unable to afford. But on the condition that China gets to exclusively use that infrastructure that they built for their own purposes for an extended period of time. An example of this is a couple years ago, the Chinese built a port in Indonesia. The terms of that, however, were that they got to lease it to themselves for 50 years. So China now effectively has built their own port for their own political and economic benefits for an extended period of time. They haven't just been building ports in Asian countries, though. They built railroads in Ethiopia and Angola, built ports in Indonesia and Greece, and pipelines in Kazakhstan and Russia, extending their reach from Asia to Africa to Europe. There are cracks in these pillars of power, however. China's population growth has actually slowed. It is a mere just 0.5%, which is even lower than the United States, showing that trouble is on the horizon to be able to maintain such a robust economy with such an aging population. Its economic growth, although robust, has slowed, and troubles to seek foreign investment as a result of China's own severe human rights abuses and the consequences of the coronavirus pandemic on the Chinese economy are yet to be seen. And their Belt and Road Initiative, too, has faced backlash. When the construction of a railroad in Kenya was supposed to employ Kenyans, the Chinese hired their own instead, raising red flags showing that economic relationship wasn't always going to be equal, but skewed towards China for their own gain, and many countries have taken notice. That being said, however, let's face the truth. The United States and Europe, whom have been the world's dominant political players, are going to have to be serious about China. They cannot ignore the fact that China is quickly on its way to becoming the world's newest superpower, and they must work with China if they wish to stay afloat. The 21st century will be the Asian century, and China is there to see it become a reality.